Hey everybody, welcome back to our Emmaus conversations on the porch. The purpose of these raw, unscripted, and heart-to-heart conversations is to give you the useful tools that you need to maintain your integrity and to maintain your wholeness during this season of life right now. We want to provide you also with useful tools and resources that will help you also continue to walk in this integrity. And what an amazing time it is right now. I mean, we're experiencing something that we've never really experienced before with this COVID-19 thing that's happening. And I have a special guest today, Dr. DeVon Mills. He's going to be talking to us about how to kind of walk in integrity, not to fall back to our addictions. And when you hear the word addictions going forward, what I'd like for you to also think of is not just addictions, because some of you may say out there, well, I don't have an addiction. Well, what we all struggle with is unwanted behaviors. And during this time, it's real easy for us to fall back into our unhealthy thinking, which leads to going back to our unwanted behaviors. And so that's something that we want to prepare ourselves to not fall away from God, but to draw closer to God. And we're just going to have a conversation about what are some of the things that we need to look out for. What are some of the things that the enemy is going to use as leverage to trip us up? Mm-hmm. And so, Dr. DeVon, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just kind of get started.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
It's always cool. A pleasure to be here. So I'm Dr. DeVon Mills. I'm in private practice here in Atlanta. I own Thrive Counseling Atlanta, and I'm also Assistant Dean at Richmont Graduate University for the School of Counseling there.
Yep. So, awesome university, by the way.
Yes, yep, we are. Wonderful institution, and do a lot of work around addictions and trauma, what I primarily specialize in.
Yeah.
When I hear you say the word addictions and unwanted behaviors, what jumps to my mind is, I'm going to use a Brene Brown term here, is she says that we are the generation of taking the edge off.
Yeah, that's true.
And so a lot of times the way to frame that is, what are we doing to take the edge off?
Right.
And that's our coping mechanism, if I start using clinical language, which would be the unwanted behaviors that you're talking about. And so when we have this conversation, just think about that. What am I using in this kind of really odd season to take the edge off?
Yeah. And I think we're all doing that. We're really feeling it right now more than ever. I mean, we're isolated, we're disconnected, and I mean, all of a sudden, all of our fear buttons are being pushed right now.
Yeah, it's a unique time because, first off, there's just this ambient anxiety that's in the air. Like, you can feel it if you stop to buy gas at QT. You can just feel it in the air that everybody wants to be done and back in their cars, which is a unique thing. It's one of the first times that I think people in general feel dangerous.
Absolutely.
So it just feels unsafe to be among people, which creates the perfect storm for addiction.
It does.
Because isolation is addiction's best friend.
Oh man, yeah.
And isolation drives addiction, and addiction feeds isolation. And so it gets into this vicious cycle, and all of a sudden, all of humanity has set us up to kind of like fall back.
You know, we want to think the best of people.
Yeah.
But if you noticed in some of the public gatherings or like in parks, I mean, people, there's a little bit of you can sense the anxiety increasing in people's behaviors and the way that they interact. They're a little bit more abrupt with each other. People are less patient. I've seen road rage increase. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, I met someone yesterday for the first time, and it was kind of this sad and humorous thing. I walked out and said, hi. I walked up and said, hi, I'm DeVon Mills. And the guy held his hand back and then jerked it back immediately, and he was horrified that he had held his hand out. And I looked at him like, who touches people? And it was just like this. All of a sudden, we've become these creatures of distance.
Exactly. And some of us aren't used to that. And I mean, honestly, I can just imagine people who have struggled with rejection in their life. Yeah. All of a sudden now to be in this place where they have zero community, like their community is completely gone. What are they doing to, as in your words, to take the edge off? And I mean, that's the universal thing that we all struggle with.
Yeah, we do.
Is rejection, is experiencing rejection. And what's been really good with the church is that we find ourselves in a place where we're in a healthy way connecting to people, and that fear of rejection is in a healthy way being resolved, I guess, and we're finding healing in that. But now the church is shut down. I mean, you can't even go get coffee with someone.
Right.
I mean, and here it is too. It's even that thought of let's go to the park and have a walk, but then you get strange looks from people.
Yeah.
Because you're not wearing a mask and gloves.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that? And so
and then today I've noticed Governor Kemp announced that starting tomorrow the whole state is on a shelter in place for the next 2 weeks, and the university system in the state of Georgia has just announced that no summer semester, online only.
Right. That's right.
So there's kind of like even this heaviness that's settled in today that's new. And so if you're watching this, you've probably felt some of that.
Absolutely.
Going on. I think a unique thing that we get into here is we're all forced to be at home a lot more than we're used to. And so it does a couple of things. Number one, we do lose community. Being able to go to group, being able to come to Emmaus, being able to go grab coffee, all of those things, that community that helps us stay connected, that keeps us from falling into those unwanted behaviors. And suddenly we start feeling trapped.
Oh man, yeah.
And then a lot of times we're feeling trapped with the people that we're working really hard to repair relationships with.
That's
And
right.
that brings about guilt.
Yep, that's true.
Because I shouldn't feel guilty for being with my wife and kids.
Right.
And so there's all of these emotions that get to happening inside of us. And so what do we do with all of this? And the big challenge, I think, is if we talk about addictions in particular, almost every person I've worked with that had addictions, there's this attachment component. And if you're not familiar with the word attachment, it just talks about how safe we feel connecting with people. And so most people with addictions have kind of broken that attachment or never had safe and healthy attachment in childhood. And so we've gone seeking other places to kind of fill this void. I think the analogy you use at Emmaus is this crack that we have in our heart, like we're filling that up. And now all of the things that we've learned that were healthy, we're not being able to access those, and we're kind of left in this really, really confined space with people who are safe and healthy.
Right.
But we don't know what to do, and we're feeling trapped. We're wanting to pull back. And I think the big challenge, and this is not going to be a great answer for a lot of you listening, is how do we lean in to those people in this moment? How do we actually start facilitating this kind of event that's forced our hand on attachment and connection?
Yeah, that's good. So what are some of your suggestions in that?
So a couple of things. I think the first thing is to recognize that if you're the partner of someone who's struggled with addiction in the past, that the idea of having to talk more and be more vulnerable is gonna be a little triggering for them. Because not certain of where that conversation can go. And so being able to know that doesn't mean that they're hiding anything, that there's relapse that's present, not to like let the mind get carried away with some assumptions because the behavior is so offbeat. It's just know they're responding to the fact that they don't have the community they're used to. They don't have the systems that they're used to. And so
things are getting weird. Like, be graceful to that person's awkward behavior.
Yeah, because they're not being able to do all the things we've been saying, hey, I need you to go to group. I need you to connect with people and be accountable. They're not getting to do that. So it's going to come out in this really odd way. So what I've been encouraging people to do, friends, clients, just everyone, is this great little structured connection tool called Fanos. It's Fanos. The first one, it's feelings, affirmations, needs, ownerships, sobriety, and struggles is what the S would stand for. And so the way that breaks down, pick a time, and I'm going to come back and talk about a little structure to the ground rules in a minute, but I want to walk through the model first.
And is this for the person who is struggling with the unwanted behaviors or the addictions?
It's for both.
For both the couples,
This is a great connection because, again, I think what's going to happen is it's going to address the issue of putting the partner the betrayed partner's mind at ease.
Okay.
Because they're going to get to hear where the person that struggled before is coming from. And it's going to address that attachment piece for the person that struggled with attachment in the past.
Good.
Because it's going to kind of facilitate a little bit more vulnerable conversation with some structure around it.
That's great.
Than would have happened before.
Now, this is also, how can we purpose this also for the single person?
Okay, for the single person, I would really encourage, if there's someone, and it's gonna, it'll be that thing of how are we connecting through FaceTime,
Gotcha.
Zoom, those type things. But I would find someone meaningful in our life that we can have this conversation with, because I think all of us in these moments are wanting to feel seen and heard.
Right.
And just to have someone that we can know, you know what, hey, we don't have the time every day to do this 2-hour deep dive.
Right.
But we've got 10 minutes that we
Right.
can take 5 minutes each and just do this tag in that's really structured and feel like I've really got to express myself and I've really got to have somebody else come near me with their needs today.
And that is so key because, Emmaus isn't just a ministry for people who are addicts. I mean, this is for people who are learning how to walk in God's design in spite of their sexual brokenness, learning how to walk in wholeness, not just from sexually, but in their relationships and understanding their emotions and learning how to steward their emotions well. And so this is really a good piece to help people understand their emotions and how to navigate through the relationships that they have, especially during FaceTime, Zoom, and all these other kind of telecom type meetings that they're having with people.
Yeah.
So, and we talked about this in the last video, making sure that people are reaching out. So
Yes.
this, what you're talking about, is really a useful tool to helping people, whether you're married or single, to reach out and to connect in a healthy way.
Yes, is to bring intentionality to our connection
That's
so that
good.
we're
I like
really
that.
getting to like the part of us, like the soul part of us that needs connection, and not just like, hey, how are you doing? Were you able to get what you need at the grocery store today?
Exactly. Yeah.
But a true like
Yeah.
soul connection.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Not, and I love that. It's about connection, not check-in.
yes.
Check-ins are superficial.
Yeah.
Connections are deep, and connections is what's going to actually help us through this time right now.
Absolutely.
Significant connections.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Fanos, the way this would work would be if you and I were checking in, or not checking in. You just said
Right.
check
That's
in.
a check-in.
Connection.
Connection. Yeah.
So if you and I
Yeah.
were connecting
Yeah.
with Fanos, what it would be is I would share with you a feeling, and that would be an actual feeling word, not something I'm thinking, but like, you know what? I'm anxious. The anxiety's in the air.
Yeah.
There's uncertainty. I don't know what it looks like to plan my semester in the summer.
Gotcha.
All of that. So I'm giving you my actual feeling. And then affirmation is I'm going to affirm something in you. And it's where I'm going to have been intentional thinking about, I know I'm going to be connecting with Israel. What's something that I appreciate about our friendship, our relationship? So
That's good.
Thank you for making yourself available in this time when I've needed to just shoot a text or something like that. And then the N is our needs. And the key thing about needs is understanding I don't necessarily need you to meet that need. And it's really important that you don't take on ownership of feeling like you have to meet my need.
That is good. That's really good.
But I'm going to say what I need is just some breathing room for things to kind of slow down.
Right.
You can't meet that need, but I need to be able to get that
Absolutely.
out. I need to put words to it.
Yeah.
And then ownership. And this is where I'm going to reflect back. What can I take ownership of?
Right.
Hey, I've thought back through this. I know you've got to be just people bombarding you. And I'm going to own that I've been texting you a lot lately and really leaning into that. So I want to take ownership for my part in that.
Wow.
And so I'm taking ownership. And then and this is where we get into if it's about addiction recovery from sexual brokenness, if we need to tag in about our sobriety, this is where if we have an agreement in place with someone that like, hey, if anything happens, I'm going to disclose to you. This is when those disclosures take place. This is when we can say it's really been a tough day, whatever the language is you have around that.
Right.
If it's not about sexual brokenness, what are our struggles?
Yeah.
I talked to someone today and her struggle was, I've got 2 kids. My husband and I are both working from home. My husband's getting up at 5:30 to
Amen.
work until I get up at
struggle.
7:30.
That is a true struggle.
And all this is going on, and people keep saying things like, "Hey, since you're not having to go into work,
Oh my God!
I know you probably have some
Yeah.
extra time. Could you work on this?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "I need people to quit saying that."
Right.
That's her struggle
Yeah.
in this moment. And so it doesn't have to be a recovery-focused thing. It can
Right.
just be that, like,
That's huge.
just this is what I'm struggling with today.
Exactly. That's huge. That's a big deal.
So that's it. So it's feelings, affirmation, needs, ownership, struggles, or sobriety. So Fanos. And then kind of the groundwork I put around this is pick roughly a set time in the day you're going to do this. Is it right after dinner? Is it when the kids go down for sleep? Is it before the kids get up in the morning? You want to figure out a time you can do it where it's not super rigid, but
Sure.
you know it's also not going to be one of those things that you're running by each other going like, oh, we're going to need to do our Fanos at some point today. But you also don't want to do it right before you go to bed. You don't
Right.
want to be like
That's-
sitting in
that
bed
makes
getting
sense.
ready to turn the lamps out saying, hey,
Right.
let's connect and let me tell you what my struggle is. That's kind of setting ourselves up for a lot of emotional dysregulation. But I think that can bring intentionality to our connection,
Absolutely.
which gives us the ability, and what we know from research and then what I know from my lived experience, connection doesn't come easy for me. It's not second nature. So to connect and to do Fanos with someone is always going to make me feel a little anxious. But then if you give it about an hour or so, I'm going to feel a significant drop in my anxiety.
I think, and this is really good for this video to be shared with, like, if you're single.
Yeah.
If you're single, if you can share this video with your accountability partners so that you can even call it out for what it is and say, hey, I want to have some Fanos time with you know? And just make it super practical and give yourself the grace and the mercy to kind of struggle through the first few.
Yeah.
And then just really understand that eventually, and we talked about this even in the first video, that once you're obedient here, the heart will follow. And so eventually feelings of comfort, and then you'll realize, man, this is exactly what you needed to establish that connection and to almost like take the edge off,
Yes.
you know, what's going on right now in our current time.
And I really love the structure of this, specifically for the single person, because so frequently, whether it's healthy, unhealthy, right or wrong, by default, we just kind of make an assumption that if we're married, that our spouse is going to be there. And so a lot of times it leaves the single individual feeling like, well, I'm really asking a lot of people with everything going on to take time for my emotions. So when we have this structure and this plan, we have really set boundaries around this. So I'm not being too much. And the person that's agreed to do this with me, like they've committed, like I'm going to join with you in this time. So I feel like it gives us that permission as a single person to reach out and say, hey, let's do our Fanos time, or when can we do that? And it kind of alleviates that feelings of too much.
That's true. That's true. So say it again really quick. It's feelings,
Affirmation, needs, ownership, and struggles or sobriety.
Gotcha. I love that end part, like really being able to share your struggles freely. And in that, the Bible talks about casting your cares on the Lord.
Yeah.
And I would even say this is a great way to even connect with God in prayer.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
Here's the thing: is you may not be able to reach out to someone. Maybe no one's answering their call, or maybe there are no Zoom groups available. I would suggest to take this and use it for the Lord. Like, talk about your feelings, and then stop. Like be real about what you're feeling. You know. Go to Him unafraid, unashamed, knowing that you have full access to the throne room, and placing yourself at His feet, and just taking the weight of your feelings and giving it to the Lord as your offering. And then at that moment, practicing some silence.
Yeah.
And just letting God respond to you in Scripture, maybe in worship, maybe in a quiet time of reflecting. Let Him affirm you. Let Him tell you, like you are the apple of His eye, that you are the jewel in His crown, that even though we live in a world full of billions and billions of people, that He loves you like an only son or like an only daughter.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just, I think it's even can be more subtle. I was recording something last night, and I talked about this experience I had on an airplane when I was reading a book, and it was just, I felt God very near.
Oh, yeah.
And there was no voice, there was no word, but it was literally like him just coming close, and I felt his presence and knew that he had like seen my heart and what I'd felt when I read.
Yeah,
and I
that's good.
think there's sometimes that we maybe don't give enough weight or value to those moments of when I share my feelings with God and I just feel his presence and just to know that he's just near.
Absolutely.
Like it's powerful and sitting there.
Well, what does the psalmist say? We talked about this in the previous video, but the nearness of God is my good.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. And then, you know, here's the thing is we have to understand this, is that during this time, kind of the brokenness in our heart is being provoked more than ever. And so how does God respond to the brokenness in our heart? It promises that he draws near.
Yeah.
So the thing about this is that while we're experiencing something that could cause us much fear, it's also a good thing in the sense that it's causing God to pull closer to us than he ever has before.
Yeah.
And so we can count on the nearness of God. And so implementing that Fanos in our prayer time, again, giving your feelings to him, being quiet and being still, letting him affirm you, and then telling God what you need.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I need to feel you.
Exactly.
I need more than
Yeah.
just to know
Yeah.
you're present. I need a word.
Exactly.
I need a human.
Man,
I need somebody
yeah.
to text me.
Yeah. One word from God can change everything.
Yeah.
One word from God.
Yeah.
And then what is the is ownership.
Ownership.
What can I do to draw near to God? What is my responsibility
Yeah.
in this place? There's what God can do, and there's what we can do.
Yeah.
What we talked about.
Yeah, I've said that before. We can't do what God can do,
Yep.
and God won't do what we can do.
That's right. And then being honest with God about what we're struggling with. It's what a beautiful, just a quick a summary of how we
Yeah.
can approach God in our alone time, how we can approach others.
And I think that sharing the struggle part with God is powerful. And I'm going to use another Brene Brown quote that I love, is that it's messy in the middle, but that's where the magic happens.
Oh yeah.
And so much of the time we think if I can really get my stuff together and call someone before I start struggling, or if I really, really do the penance thing on the end and disclose to someone when I've behaved. And I think it's messy in the middle, but that's where the magic happens, is when I reach out and say, you know what, this is what I really want to do. Like if I had my way, this is what I would engage in, and like really invite other people or invite God into that space where it's really messy. That really is where the magic happens.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what, there's something about, when you come to God clean, like when you try to clean yourself up and come to God, encountering his presence is just different. But when you come to him messy and for who you truly are in that moment, and the way that he embraces you and loves you, in spite of all your mess and in spite of you being still like your hands dirty from the sin you just touched, for him to embrace you in that moment is absolutely healing and absolutely redemptive. So wow, that's good.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate having you here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, it was an honor to spend this time with you.
Yes, thank you.
We're praying for you, and we're praying for what's happening in our community and in our culture. And so, as always, it is an honor to journey with you. We will see you next time.